Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another conversation here on the Power Hour TV show. I'm your fill-in host today, Portia Booker from the Grief Grand Tour. And so, welcome back, everybody. One of the things that I want to touch on today is relationships beyond the physical realm. One of the things that I'm always grateful for, everybody, is the relationships that I currently still have with both of my parents, even though they have transitioned from this physical plane. One of the things that I often think about when I think about relationships is number one, the connection, right? Because I think oftentimes when we are building relationships, cultivating relationships, the number one thing that we tend to forget oftentimes is the relationship that we have with ourselves. Right. And I think for me, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the last couple years with the transition of both of my parents is number one, finding gratitude in the current seat of occupancy that I have in my life. And so, what do I mean by that, right? The current seat of occupancy that I have in my life today is the space of helping other people to navigate their own grief journey. And also, that stemmed from me having loss, right? And I think a lot of times when we're building relationships, connecting with people, forming bonds, we have to stop and ask ourselves, what does that relationship that I yearn to have with others, what does that look like with me? What does that look like from the past version of me? How can I learn to incorporate the values and the belief systems that I previously had with the version of myself from years ago? How can I learn to incorporate that into my everyday? And how can I use that to nurture the current relationships that I have, right? Because I think a lot of times when we are building relationships, holding on to different friendships or of that nature, whether it's fur kids or whoever we have relationships with, right? We tend to sometimes forget that piece. And so today we have a wonderful lineup of guests who are going to dive more in today about relationships beyond the current time period. So we're going to hear a note from our sponsor really quick, Jose Escobar. And when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation here on the Power Hour TV show. We'll be right back.
Is Jose Escobar. I live in Washington, D.C. area. I'm a family man. I'm an entrepreneur, coach, author, and speaker. I have communities. I support people. I'm a servant leader, and the list goes on. And I'm primarily the CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. That's my bread and butter. That's my core offer, right? That's where I put most of my time and energy. And the Connected Leaders Academy is a growing community. It's a tribe of some of the highest level entrepreneurs from all over the world. We're now over 350 plus members, 42 states across the US, and 17 international countries. If you're an entrepreneur out there that's looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more money, more clients, right? This is the community for you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Power Hour TV show. Today, we are joined by an amazing array of guests from around the globe. So, we are joined by JL Keez. Welcome, JL.
Hello, how are you? Great to be here early in the morning. It's great.
It is early for you. And we are also joined by Mr. Adam Latin. Welcome, Adam, to the Power Hour TV show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited.
I am too. And one of the things that I love to start off, even on my own show, the Grief Grand Tour, we start off with gratitude. And I'm curious for both of you. We'll start with you, JL. How has gratitude played a role in your relationships that you currently have and also the previous relationships that you have outgrown?
Oh gosh, the two relationships that I'm so grateful for are my children. I mean, they're adults now at 38 and 35. But with the life path that I've had and the struggles, I know that if my children weren't the strength behind me, I don't know that I'd be sitting here talking on this, talking with you this morning. So they are the relationships. Of course, you give birth to those children, and then you develop a relationship with them throughout your life. And I'm so, so grateful for the people that they are and what they brought to my healing journey as well. My life has been one where I have changed so much, and changed from one life to another almost. And so I actually have very few ongoing relationships that have, tested the time. What's that word? Tested time, or whatever we say. And I think that's a reflection of how much I've changed, throughout my life and my healing journey as well. And some people go the path, and other people come into your life to serve that purpose, that healing purpose. And you say you're grateful for the input that they've had, and then they move on in their lane and I move on in mine. So in answer to your question about gratitude, my children are the strongest ones. They're the ones that have lasted and will continue to do so. And it's been added to by a grandson, and I can see that relationship will also provide a lot of worth in my life as well.
And Jaya, I love how you brought up the transitions, right, that you have undergone in your life, right? Because I know, based on what I know about you, you've experienced several different bouts of mental wellness obstacles, right? And through those, when we think about relationships, right, different people come into our lives for a season and some come in for a lifetime. So I'm glad that you really highlighted that bond between you and your children, because that truly must be powerful in its entirety. So I appreciate you shedding light on that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Adam, what about you? How has gratitude played a role in the current relationships that you have, and also the ones from the past that you have outgrown?
So what I would say is that what I learned most about gratitude, especially in relationships, is remembering we have to teach people these specific things that we're grateful for. Rather than just saying thank you, I got married a couple of years ago to my amazing wife, and I'm always very specific about where I experience an authentic sense of gratitude. Rather than just saying thank you as a habit, I believe it's important to teach people how to earn us, celebrate us, engage with us. And so when I find people not celebrating me, not being specific, I'll have a conversation. But if they really don't, if they're not clear on where my skill can support them, what I'm good at, where that can actually support them, I'm very good at just saying, I can't invest in this interaction because it's not sacred enough for me. And so for me, gratitude is a recognition of value and worth in terms of interacting with other people. So that's kind of my answer. I hope that answers the question.
Adam, it makes me think about something really quick, because you brought up the importance of being specific when it comes to gratitude, right? And I think a lot of people, they use that word very loosely, kind of like the word I love you, right?
Right.
Where I think in the world that we live in, gratitude has become much more as far as how it's used, right? There's this innate expectation that you have to be grateful for any and everything. If it doesn't stem from something specific, then how can you really embody what gratitude really is? And I'm curious for you, Adam, what did it take for you to embrace gratitude being more of a specific state of being instead of just saying thank you?
So I would say that I'm if you're familiar with the 5 love languages, I'm a acts of service person. I really need in love. Um, uh, I really need in love to connect based on how someone can support me specifically, how clear their awareness of my needs actually is. Now, mind you, like I said, I'm very specific about communicating that beforehand. I don't expect people to guess or know, because so many people expect that we in relationship that if we care about someone, we know how to feed them. And that's completely ridiculous to me. Like, I think it's like, where would that person have learned that specific skill to even know what you're looking for and have been given that knowledge? And so, to me specifically, my wife is an organizational wonder. I'd say that she's the more powerful tornado of order to my tornado of disorder. And so, like, that's definitely a gift. It just all depends. There are people that I'm grateful just for their time of sitting with me in different things, but it's specific to how we do create different experiences. I'm not really a thing person. I'm not grateful for things. I find that it's dismissed for me individually. I respect other people's need to be grateful for things, but I don't find that things are where I connect. And so I think you shouldn't just randomly be grateful because gratitude's valuable. I think that actually diminishes that energy. So we want to be really specific.
And I agree with you. I think with anything, right? Someone said that I'm grateful. Gratitude to me is not taking people in our lives for granted, right? So letting them know how much we truly appreciate them takes a level of, number one, awareness, right? Awareness of how this person has really come into our life, has really benefited us to get to where we need to go. And also how we've been able to see their growth, right? Because relationships is not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street, right? And I think we sometimes forget that, depending on what avenue we're at in our life, where we're working towards a better version of ourselves, or if we're going through series of tornadoes, right? And I know, JL, you've been through several, as I've mentioned, right? And I'm curious, JL, for you, when you think about the different obstacles that you have wrestled with, right? Anorexia, other mental wellness challenges, how would you say those obstacles have created opportunities for you to build not just healthier relationships with other people, but also with yourself?
Oh gosh, I could talk to you for hours on that one. I was very fortunate at the age of 37 to meet a lady called Joan Hookstad, and she practiced reality therapy. And it was through that therapy, because I'd been through so much by then. I had actually conquered the eating disorder, but then an array of mental illnesses took over, because obviously I had not healed from the reason that I'd gone to an eating disorder in the first place. So, but when I met Joan, she was the one that really brought out and put on the platform of understanding for me that relationships is the basis of everything that we suffer, if you like. Our relationships have the ability to make or break us. And through her guidance and exploring my life with her, I could see how the relationships that I'd been born into, and then relationships that had come into my life as a result of where I was born into, had shaped the person that I had become, and therefore the manifestation of an eating disorder and those things. And Joan went on to teach me about, healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships. And I could see, looking back in the pathway of my life from the age, because I was 37 when I met her, how unhealthy all of these relationships had been and how they had contributed to my downfall, if you like. So out of that, of course, I then began to understand the power of healthy relationships and what they actually look like. And through that, thankfully, my children were 7 and 4, I think, when I met Joan. And I could see that I was repeating that unhealthy pattern with my children, and that I was going to have a downfall impact on those two children if I didn't, make some changes as well. So, and it was interesting from that point on, the different people that were brought into my life, and some of them weren't great relationships, but they taught me about me and the changes that I needed to make so that I could recover and be well. So in gratitude, you let them go. And I know in my books that I've written, I've referenced several of those connections, which weren't great at the time, but thank you very, very much for the strength you gave me to understand me. So, as you're probably seeing, I could go on forever talking about relationships and the power of relationships to make or break us. But in answering your question, which I've actually forgotten what the initial one was because I've just rambled on probably. Look, the bottom line, relationships is where it's at. They make or break us. And just because a relationship has left our life, we no longer communicate with that person, perhaps for whatever reason, life has taken us down a different path, they can still have an impactful influence on where we're going, depending on the nature of that relationship at the time. So, gosh, I hope I've answered your question. I haven't gone into too many tangents, but you can see that this is an area that I'm very passionate about. So thank you for asking the question. Thank you.
No, and Jael, you did, because what comes to my mind is, how when we're in school, right? And we're told that it's always the professor or teacher or person who was the hardest on us that we remember the most, right? I remember when I was in elementary school, I had a teacher who said to the entire class that only people with A's would succeed. And so for me now, when I look at that statement that this teacher said, in the beginning, it kept me a prisoner because I thought, oh, if I don't have straight A's, then I'm not going to be successful. Then I'm not going to go anywhere. Right. But as I've worked on myself to reframe how I see everything, I can look at that statement as a stepping stone, right? Instead of something that is, in a sense, keeping me a prisoner, I can see it as a stepping stone to really question and challenge, why do I believe this? Is this really true? So I think it's kind of the same thing of what you're saying, Jill, through your recovery journey, right? Building that level of relationships with yourself through the different people that have come in and out, right? You learn something from each and every one of them. So truly, when you have a mindset of gratitude, right, nothing is truly lost. So, Adam, something that I picked up in your bio that I want to touch on, you mentioned about the importance of kind of filtering information that we tend to get and seek, right, in order to really stay focused. And I'm
Right.
curious, Adam, how can we learn to apply that to the different relationships that we currently have in order to, number one, really build a stronger bond with ourselves and strengthen the current relationships that we have?
So I think it's important not to potentially strengthen the current relationships we have. First of all, I think it's important to first assess the current relationships that we have to make sure they're actually of value worth strengthening. One of the things that I'm a numbers person, like I love numbers. And so I always talk about the fact that time exists in this incarnation, whether you're a reincarnationist or believe in the soul. As this current identity, we have about, on the outside, about 100 years. So that's already an inherent limiter. So that limit needs to be treated sacredly, which means we have to really consider, who are we giving our time to? Like I talk a lot to my clients about, think about 5 minutes with someone. If you're giving that 5 minutes, does that feel like it's creating a drain or it's creating support? And so really assessing and knowing what the matching of who you are. So we live now with the information age. We have so much overabundance of noise and information and different things that psychology hasn't even caught up, because we're still trying to seek, and we don't really need to seek anymore because so many people have opinions. So many people are sharing their ideas that we need to actually be able to say instead, is this real or is this someone's projection of what they think we are without really knowing? And so I believe in really having clarity of self and knowing we have to limit the information and the connections we have with people, if they cannot support us in a real authentic way. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean not having fun and having a good time, but it means really measuring everything, because we have so much coming in that it's like we only can really use about 2 to 3% of what we have access to throughout our entire lives. And it used to be, even 30, 40 years ago when I was growing up as a kid, where you had to seek information, you had to seek ideas. And so a lot of our therapies, a lot of our counseling, and a lot of our support is still based on that old fashioned idea of seeking rather than filter, than knowing exactly what's for us and what's not. And so, more than ever, at least where I am in the US, people need to be able to say no many, many more times to effectively say yes. Where it used to be, all you needed to do was find your yeses.
Adam, I agree with you. I mean, I think measuring has become a lost art a little bit, because I think because of the overabundance of social media, right? Because I grew up with internet, but not so much with the cell phones and all of this that we have. So I'm somebody who can put my phone down for hours in a day and be good with reading a book or doing something else, right? But I think to your point, when it comes to relationships and being self aware, I think it's key for us to filter, really ask ourselves the question of, how does this relationship either add to me or deplete me? And I think taking inventory on a regular basis too can also help with that. And I'm curious, Adam, for our audience who's tuning in, right? If they are in a space where they are wanting to assess all the relationships that they have, right? Maybe what's a first step that they can take today to really embark on that journey and show themselves some grace as they do it?
So, I look at a simple concept of, when you find yourself writing or speaking to someone, does it feel like sharing information or does it feel like convincing? If you're feeling the energy of convincing, you're automatically in a toxic interaction, because a part of you already is an inherent awareness that that person is not receiving you. And in most cases, they're not supposed to receive you. People are not supposed to learn unless they are ready to learn. So it's essential to never inform people unless you have full consent. Sharing an idea without consent, to me, is extremely inappropriate. Yet most people feel like that's the way that they show love.
And I agree with you. I mean, I think to your point though, Adam, a lot of people, right, we speak or talk to people or we listen with the anticipation to respond instead of listening to learn and to digest, right? So I think to your point, number one, we need to learn to become better listeners. Number one. Number two, build on our self awareness muscle, right? Really take inventory of how, when we're interacting with someone in person, what's their body language like? Are they looking at me? Are they giving me eye
If
contact?
we can, I
Yeah.
don't mean to interrupt you, but if
Yeah.
we can, most people are not capable of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the challenge, is that when I'm sure most people that are listening to this show are interested in growth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's equally important to recognize most people are neurologically incapable of perceiving more effectively. And we have to be able to give them grace for
Mm-hmm.
their natural limit.
And I think too, to your point, Adam, when it comes to showing them grace, I think a lot of people are under this veil that showing them grace comes with sometimes a level of what I call aggression at times. But I'm a firm believer that there's always a way to show people grace, love, compassion with meeting them where they're at, right? And I think if we understand and really dive into learning who we are, we're able to really give people that level of compassion and love if there is a disconnect in where we are on our journey with them. So, JL, did you want to add to anything with that?
Uh, just coming back to that word awareness, I know that as I've gone through my journey of healing, one of the gifts I feel that I've been given is exactly that awareness of where people are at and where I'm at. And so many times I'm gobsmacked when I see people relating, and I think, how can they not know that that's going to be the outcome, or how can they not know that that's inappropriate, or that that's going to be hurtful, or all of those things? And it comes right back to, well, they don't know, because they're living life as it's been presented to them. And I think it's when you go through something as difficult that I've been through, and there's many people over the world that have done the same thing, it's through that process, and particularly in my case where I'm learning about the impact of relationships, it's through that process that you begin to become aware of what relationships are actually doing to each other. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to witness that, because you think, how can you not know that you've just done that to that person, and that's why they're reacting like that? And it's really hard for me to go, but they don't know, because they haven't learned and gained that wisdom and that power of understanding different people. So as I think Adam was reflecting on as well, when you meet people for the first time, you can pretty well, I think when you've been through the great difficulties that I have been through, you can very quickly assess where that person's at, and therefore either decide to be great and to be gracious in that process, instead of being critical in your head of how can they, all of that sort of thing, and just accept and embrace and conduct yourself accordingly, and then either decide to continue that connection or discontinue because you're in a different lane in life. I always talk about lanes in life and finding your lane and finding where you're at. But I guess to qualify that too, it doesn't necessarily mean to disconnect from that person. It might change the way you are connecting with that person to bring them into awareness. And that might be my role. So, that's for me to navigate and say, am I just out of here with this person, or have I been brought in as a role for that person, a role model in some way, to help them navigate whatever's happening for them. So, yeah, that's how I'm going to answer that one.
No, and I love what you just brought up, JL, about we ask ourselves, well, how come they don't know? And as Adam just mentioned, a lot of people are not neurologically there to be able to know that, right? I think we used to say as kids, like, things were common sense, right? And I think, Adam, to your point, like, what really now in the age of information is considered common sense when we all grew up a little differently, right? Some things were innately. Go ahead, Adam. I know you wanted to chime in. Go ahead.
So, yeah, what I basically said is that the internet killed common sense about 20 years ago, because common sense requires there to be a common belief system and idea. And now, because of the fact that everything is essentially opinion and philosophy and not fact, we have to be able to engage with releasing the idea that common sense can exist. That everything actually needs to be explained and discussed, or there's no guarantee that there's any awareness. And that what we are capable of paying attention to, also to your point, is based on exposure. And so because we're being exposed to so many different things here on this side, then we're not going to have the time to be exposed to what exists here on this side. And so it just literally can't exist, whether someone else wants it to or not. There has to be a point at which we say, like, it's reasonable that this information is not known, rather than it's unreasonable this information is not known.
And I agree with you. I mean, I think in the world we live in, everything hasn't caught up to the modern times, right? Some people
Yeah.
are still kind of living in that, dystopia a little bit. But I think the more we have these conversations, right, knowing our awareness level and understanding that everybody's exposure level is different, and we can really show them compassion, grace as we interact with them and budget our time wisely. So, we're going to take another quick break right here on the Power Hour TV show. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with JL and Adam. We'll be right back.
Maybe I shouldn't quit my day job with those dancing skills.
You have. So my beautiful Jose.
Yes.
This is my clipperboard. It's
Wow.
your name on and today's date. So I
Love
quickly
it.
want to ask you to do a recording for me. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Action! Hello, my beautiful Jose. Please tell us where you're from and tell us a little bit about you.
Yes, Jose Escobar out of the Washington, D.C. area. Born in Washington, D.C., raised in Maryland, and currently live in Maryland pretty much all my life. And happily married to my wife, Katie. I have 5 wonderful children from 16 years old all the way down to 1-year-old, 2 boys on either end and 3 girls in the middle. I have a background in martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai kickboxing. In the corporate arena, when I was in the corporate world, I was in the banking world, I was in life insurance, I was in property and casualty. And then I eventually transitioned into the martial arts arena. I became the sales director for a global martial arts company. And now I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I'm a CEO of 2 companies, the Entrepreneur's Bookshelf and the Connected Leaders Academy. I'm a coach, author, speaker, community builder, and just a serial entrepreneur, and just always looking to add value and serve people.
Wow. And that's that value and serve people that I wanted to have this interview with you. It's going to be a short one, but I wanted to ask, you are sponsoring so many people already with their podcasts or with their shows. I want to say thank you so much that you are sponsoring me for my show, Power Hour TV show. Can you tell us why you do this?
Well, first of all, I believe in you, Sanet. I believe in you. I believe in your purpose and your vision and your mission, the wonderful things that you're about. You're a giver. You're a servant leader. You have a heart of gold, and you're inspiring so many people. And that to me speaks volumes. And when somebody's in my corner, I'm in their corner, and I'm a very loyal person. So when I knew you were going to launch this show globally and do all the wonderful things that you're doing, I said, you know what, I want to be a part of that, even on a small level. And you presented the opportunity, and guess what? Success happens when opportunity and preparedness meet. It just so happens I'm prepared to be a sponsor, and you presented the opportunity, and I seized it, and I'm excited and super grateful for that.
I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, my beautiful Jose. Is there one tip or one advice you can give to anybody that is going to watch this recording?
Yes. Never be discouraged if where you are in business right now is not working. Because let me tell you something very clear, unequivocal. It is always working. The process, the journey to success in business is not just monetary. It's not just about money, right? It has to do with a lot of things that you're going to acquire along the way, like mental toughness, character, discipline, consistency, follow through, all of these things that are going to start to happen over time. And of course, you make money along the way, and you're serving and impacting the world. So when you feel in your heart that it's not working, you feel discouraged and you feel down, you feel like quitting or giving up, just know it is always working. It's either working in the sense that it's working for you, or it's working on you, right? But it's always working. So don't be confused because it's not working for you. It doesn't mean it's not working. No, it's working. It's working on you. And if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, at the end of the tunnel, guess what? Eventually it's going to work for you.
Wow, I love it. Thank you, my beautiful Jose. You are amazing. It's a wrap.
Wonderful.
Okay, that
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Power Hour TV show. We are joined with our two guests, JL Keez and also Adam Latin. We were having an amazing conversation around relationships and building bonds beyond time. So I'm going to ask both of you. Both of you have a golden nugget. So I'm going to start with you, Adam. What is your golden nugget, and how did that become your golden nugget for today?
Wow. Okay. I actually don't have the sheet in front of me. Do you have access to it
I
where
do.
you can read it?
So so your golden nugget is know the difference between love and support. Just because someone loves you doesn't mean that they
Okay.
have
Yeah, of course.
skills to support you.
Okay. And so I really think that that's a key ingredient to life is I know so many people that are hurt and disappointed because they were taught that the people that love you will be the people that support you. And it creates so much depression and loss and pain when they don't feel supported, even though they know they're loved. And so I think of support as skills where someone can do something for you. They can listen in a particular way. Even listening is a skill. Okay. They know how to speak to you. They know how to do tasks for you. Like I said, I'm big on someone doing specific things for me. They know how to physically hold you, whatever it is. Those things are things that people are either skilled in or not skilled in. In a lot of cases, it isn't even their choice, it's just what's developed as a result of so many various factors. And so when we look to people that love us and say, like, help me, I go, well, if they were a stranger and you saw their list of skills, would they be the people you actually learn from? You know? And so, like this person saying, like, most people actually think challenging someone is how you support them. There are actually people that truly believe, and don't get me wrong, I know people that are specifically supported by challenges. But in the work that I do, I talk about having, just like the love languages, um, having different support languages, having a conversation, having a place to start around how you're actively supported. And so I think that people feel lost and alone because they're taught that the people that love them should support them. And if it's not those people, no one will ever do it. That's the story people have in their heads. And so I tell them, no. In most cases, there's not a meeting of where you need to be supported. I believe very strongly in mentorship because that's how I came out of the holes I was in. I found amazing mentors to learn from. And so we need to find people that match us and be sure that people match us before we receive support from them.
And I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. I'm curious, when you bring up how we have love languages, right? And you're encouraging us to, in a sense, develop that same, if you want to call it, like, book around support language. How
Yeah.
would you go about today someone creating that level of support language? Maybe what are some key things that people can keep in mind when they're creating that for themselves?
So I like using specific words. So like I use cheerleading, tasking, um, uh, listening, holding space. Because listening and holding space are very different. Just really look at in the moments you did feel connected to someone, what was going on at that time. Look at your past because hopefully there have at least been a couple of moments somewhere. If not, this is what I do with people. I help them identify it and become very clear. Like that's what I love working with the most is creating those things for individual couples and families because especially in the family unit nowadays, what's being supportive is completely different. It used to be that the family did have sort of input on how a child is motivated and directed. Nowadays, by 8 or 9, the child is its own entity.
I agree with that. I mean, and I think that also goes back to the original topic or conversation we were having, that things have not come up with times, where information is everywhere. You got kids on TikTok that have mastered how to get over 1 million likes in, several
Yep.
days. With us, we're like, what's this? So I agree with you to that extent. JL, did you want to chime in with Adam's golden nugget? Did you want to add to any of that before I ask about yours?
Not really. I think that he's spoken to it pretty well, actually. Right.
JL, your golden nugget is, may my recovery story be your recovery story. I'm curious, how did that come to you, and how can others adopt that into their everyday when they are assessing their relationships and building their own?
Okay, that comes back to, I guess, my journey. I was an anorexic from 15 to 24, and then from 24 on, I developed, suicidal depression, OCD, and all of these other things. And it was the lack of understanding along the way, the different people that I sourced or brought into my life to help explain what was happening to me. First thing that they didn't do when I walked into their offices was build a relationship with me. And the second thing they didn't have was lived experience. So when I came to looking at, well, what would a golden nugget look like for me moving forward with the work that I now do and the books that I write, the greatest gift that I was given was Joan again. Why? Because she built a relationship from me from the moment I stepped into her surgery. She wanted to know who I was and what I brought to my life. And she also build the relationship, but she also, unbeknownst to me, for about 2 years of working with her, she had lived experience. And it was that lived experience of understanding that when I opened my mouth and spoke, she could relate to that because she'd been in that space once before. And so she knew then how to direct the conversation with me, how to explore the different fears that I was presenting to her and what I was bringing to the table of my life. And I didn't know. I just thought she was a very clever, understanding lady, which she was. But she had that added dimension of total understanding born from lived experience, from her own life events of being, sexually abused as a child and a family turning away from her because they didn't want to support her. Well, they didn't, because they didn't want secrets coming out about the family. And that's a part of my life as well. So when I sat down, I thought, well, after everything that I've been through, what have I got to offer? I've got my lived experience, and I've now got the ability to build healthy relationships and connections with those people that I'm going to converse with. And so through that, I know, because I've sat on the other side of that table as well, they're going to tune into the fact that I'm bringing a lot of worth through understanding them. And I think that's really important for a client to feel that this person sitting across from them actually has that deeper connection of understanding, where they're at. And look, Joan took 2 years, as I said, to then, because I think I said one day, look, how have you done this so efficiently and well when all the other people that I've sourced haven't done anything like what you've done? And she came out and said, well, I'll share my story with you. And I went, whoa. So her recovery story had actually become my recovery story through the common ground of understanding. So my golden nugget, my recovery story, look, by connecting with someone whose story is very similar to yours, allows the doors of understanding to open, on the other side. So I know through each of the books that I've written, that's what people have come back and said. The depth of understanding that you have for illness, disease, for what develops in our lives as discomforts is outstanding. And I think, well, it's just that I've learned it through Joan. Thank you very much, Joan. And learnt the power of bringing understanding into any description of illness that we end up in. So I think people learn from other people's suffering, and when you resonate, the greatest ability to come out of it is then born. So hence the golden nugget that I created. Yeah.
Adam, did you want to add something? Because I saw you nodding your head. I want.
I really think that it's sad how much we dismiss lived experience in place of education. And I have such frustration with that, because in most cases I've seen education can actually prevent the ability to access through lived experience and relatability.
And I agree. I think in our world today, and JL, through your journey, right, there's a lot of heavy stigma when it comes to mental wellness obstacles of so many different sorts. And to Adam's point, I agree, there's blockages and barriers and blockades that are continued to put in place because of that education priority. But let's be realistic. I think it's interesting that in different places around the world where lived experience tends to be the forefront of healing, but it tends to be debunked in other societies where PhD, MS, MD tends to take precedent over how we help people or people get services as a society, right? I had a professor in college who said the best phrase that I'll always remember: education without application is useless. And I remember when he said that in college, I said, "Ooh, he's on to something." And now, as we're having this conversation, it makes me take a moment to look at how, again, to your point, Adam, we haven't caught up. We
Yep.
haven't caught up to the perspective of lived experience being a big open door to help more people to heal and work through whatever obstacles that they've experienced, right? And to your point, JL, Joan, this amazing woman who walked a very similar path, like parallel to yours, right? I've had that too, where I've met so many people who have walked a similar parallel path to me, who have been able to help me. They might have not have had all the, PhD, LISW, whatever behind their name, but they saw me where I was.
That's it. That's absolutely it. And I guess in the fourth book that I've just written now, I highlight this as all throughout the book, actually. And I, in a human sort of a way, not human, humor sort of a way as well, where I do acknowledge that I had different psychologists and psychiatrists, coming with their medication and everything. And I can, at the time you think, well, this is it. And what they're sharing with me is what I actually have to do. And they're actually right in how they're assessing me, until you come out of there and you know better. And then you meet someone like Joan, who gives you the realness of your life, hence reality therapy. And she begins to draw from her own experience. So that, as I've said before, that wealth of understanding is what made the huge difference between one and the other. These other people, as Adam was saying, went through and learnt their educational path on, why people end up in these mental areas or these eating disorders or whatever it is. And they think they know because that's what their education has taught them. But the gap between education and understanding is where too many people fall and don't have the opportunity to recover. And they're fed all of this information that they then feel they have to believe in and actually do this, that, and the other. And when it doesn't work, they go, well, heck, And I remember going through it with myself, and I got to a point where I thought, well, this is just my life. I just have to somehow suck it up and try to get through the best I could. But there was that little bit of wondering still in me of going, no, it doesn't have to be this way. There's a gap in here. What is missing from my healing journey? And I guess that's when, the universe presented Joan to me at the right time, when I was ready to hear that there actually is a different range of causative effects as to why I was suffering to the depth that I was. And gradually she brought that out. And what was the difference? Yeah, she was a psychologist and she had her education, but she was able to marry her education with her lived experience and know the value of which parts of that education to bring into her clinic when she was dealing with her clients, and be able to infuse that with her lived experience. And that was the standout difference in all of that. So, and I do say in my book, so, if you're looking for someone to support your recovery journey, ask them who they are before you actually take them on board to help you. Who are you? What's your experience been? What have you suffered? How did you come out of it? Ask those important questions, because the relationship that you develop with that person is one of the most important relationships if you're ever going to recover. And if that person goes, oh, well, I went here and I did this and I went to this university and then I went to this one and here I am, they're not your person. Say, well, thank you very much for sharing that with me, but I'm looking for someone with lived experience. Do you have that? No, you haven't. See you later. Sort of thing. Not as blunt as that, but from my own experience, I've learned that knowing the person sitting across the table from you that you have put your faith in and learning about them is just as important the other way around. So, and that again contributes to developing that wonderful relationship, because it will be the relationship as well that gives you the confidence in them to guide you through to wellness. So I hope that helps in our discussion this morning and what we're wanting, I guess, people to hear and perhaps resonate with and learn from. Yeah.
And I agree with that, JL. I think what you just mentioned is very spot on and resonates with me. Really taking that initial step and getting to know who this person is, and also being confident enough to say, yeah, I appreciate knowing all of this about you, but you're not my person. Right. And that's perfectly okay to Adam's point, saying no. Right. It's okay to say no when you know it's not a no-go. So we're gonna do one more final round of if you want to call it, little nuggets for our audience to think about today, and also let them know where they can find you. So Adam, we'll start with you. What's some parting words that you can leave with our audience today? And also, if they want to follow you and connect with you, definitely let them know.
So, all right. I would say really invest in awareness around the words you use. For me specific, especially if we're talking relationships, cherishing someone is a really important skill to develop. Having a conversation, asking someone what makes you feel cherished, and also asking yourself what being cherished, what you want to experience as the word cherished. Really having that conversation. It used to be a very powerful, prominent word because everyone says love and it's constant, but it's become separate. I think of cherish as an action or an energy that you hold for someone else, where you're really putting aside your own identity and really being clear on the identity of what that person and how that person receives. So for me, I would say that's my thing, is bring cherish back into your life or build it there for the first time. Cherishing yourself and cherishing others. So
appreciate that. And where can people find you, Adam, if they want to connect with you?
I mean, honestly, it's always easier to connect with me through phone than anything else. So it's 860-805-0482. I'm currently undergoing transforming my website. So people can also find me at theclearestyou, all one word.com. But it's undergoing different stuff. And honestly, just call or text. It's usually easiest. If people really only want to connect through email, they can also connect with me at theclearestyou@gmail.com.
Excellent.
But everything's The Clearest You. My book, my everything. So I was really able to get a phenomenal support in focusing on the brand name of my business.
Love it. The Clearest You. Very simply put. I love
Right.
it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Adam. What about
Absolutely.
you?
Thank you.
What about you, JL? What's a final word for our audience, and also how can they connect with you as well?
Well, thank you for that opportunity, Portia, to do this. I would really like people, we've been talking about relationships this morning and talking about the importance of connected relationships. But what I would like to do is sort of, we could do another whole show on this and, what disconnected relationships look like. So what do we bring to a relationship, but what do we need to leave out so relationships don't become disconnected? And so we can bring the word cherish back. We can bring the word love in its truest form, love, and all of those. And I'd like to, because it's too big an answer here for now for the time frame that we have, but I would like to guide people in our audience today to Google reality therapy underpinned by choice theory and to navigate your way through there. And there's 7 connecting habits we have in this particular theory, and there's 7 disconnecting habits. And I would like people to go and do some navigating and some research around reality therapy and what does it look like and what is it sharing with us about relationships. And what are those 7 connecting behaviors and what are those 7 disconnecting? And then to honestly look at the relationships that you're building with people around you and seeing whether you need to fine tune and look at, well, heck, I do that and I do it. No wonder I'm disconnected. Gosh, I need to refine my connecting skills here. So I'd really like people to do some investigation around what reality therapy underpinned by choice theory has to offer. Because that was what brought the understanding and the healing for me. So, of course, I'm going to really support that here. How can they connect with me? My website, jlkeez.com.au, and like Adam, it's going through some change. I'm needing to add a lot of things to it at the moment, particularly the exposure that I'm getting and the gratefulness that I have for connecting with Sanet Breda and writing for her online magazine and all of those things. And I need to add that into my website as well. But if people would like to connect with me and ask questions or whatever, then the email is hello@jlkeez.com.au. To find out how I might be able to support you, not only in your healing, but another area that I guess, I hope I'm allowed to speak to it here, but I think it's important when we have these sort of lives that we have, and we have a lot of acquired wisdom along the way, sharing it not only in a platform like this where we're able to speak, but also sharing it through article and sharing it through writing. So Sanet has asked me to set up writing courses for her community members to teach people how to write their wisdom and put it into words. So that's another thing that I'm offering as well, because I am an award-winning writer. I have written my books and I'm writing articles all the time for different online magazines. So I think that I have something that I can offer to people who say, look, I'd really like to be able to share my words and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to relate and create that relationship through article with people out there in the world. And so if that's a block for you, then I might be your person to help, because I'd love to hear, the wisdom that you've got, because it might benefit me as well in my continued journey. So, I would love to hear from different people.
So everybody, you have heard from both of our guests today, Mr. Adam Lattin and also JL Keez. That concludes another conversation here on the Power Hour TV show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.